Hello, audience. This is Steve Brule from Studio Brule, and I'm here live with the Liberty Bells from London, UK. It's five ladies who are discussing their... Whoa, got a feedback here. From London, England, who discuss their take or give their take on cultural issues and the changing cultural landscape in Britain and beyond. So today we have Elizabeth and Natoya and Paula with us. And would you like to start with, there was a topic that came up just before we went live, and that was the changes to rape and sexual assault victims not being allowed to be cross-examined in court. Mic's open, so who wants to take a stab at what this means?
Elizabeth?
Elizabeth?
Well, basically what we have is our Justice Secretary, Liz Truss, has announced that from September, alleged victims of rape will be able to give pre-recorded evidence in trials and avoid cross-examination, which is obviously, you know, the death of us, really. Ladies, what do you think of this?
Is that categorical? They can't be cross-examined at all on their evidence, because that...
No, the evidence is going to be shown at the beginning of the trial, and then they're not going to be present, not going to be asked anything else. That's
obviously
it.
One of the... Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
No, carry on, Toya.
Well, at the moment, they already have the right to be behind a screen or by video link. Understand why there's a need for more procedures to remove the complainant courtroom. It doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, I know why they're doing it, but I'm just saying it. For me, if you're making the argument as to why they would need to do this, it logically, and I know it's feminism we're talking about here, so there is no logic, but even so, like if they're making this argument to the general public, information already.
Who proposed this change to the law? Does anybody know who proposed it?
Liz Truss.
Yeah, I can't imagine that could possibly happen, because, you know, it's the process of kind of the... I used to work a lot in the law school because I'm an actor as well, and they used to give me kind of scripts and bundles and stuff, and so I used to have to kind of be the defendant for the prosecution and the defense and stuff like that. And that kind of whole process of kind of open question and closed question is kind of enshrined within kind of British law. I can't imagine how that would ever, they'd ever get possibly managed to do that.
Well, it's not a question of how they would do it. It's done. It was in the newspapers, and this is law now in the UK, as far as I could read. Is that not true? Elizabeth, you were reading on this, right?
Yeah, I've read a lot on it, and it seems to be true. Yeah, there's a lot of female sort of lawyers and ex-barristers and stuff who are speaking out against it, but it's happening.
I mean, this is law now as we speak. There's no more hurdles. It's passed, is it not?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, it's absurd. I mean, it means a lawyer cannot pick apart an argument or evidence or try to get behind somebody's carefully crafted lie if they carefully craft a lie on video. So, I mean, the whole mechanism for cross-examination gives the lawyer a chance to really challenge that story in a way that a witness would not be prepared for. And of course, a truthful witness would have no trouble backing up the stories, whereas a liar tends to shoot themselves in the foot over cross-examination. So this is a bizarre and unusual, I think unprecedented perhaps, change to the legal system there, is it not?
Well, that's just quite credulous, because I can't believe that they would be able to do that. That's ridiculous. As much as
it's...
Okay, and I'm just...
You got something to say?
Oh, sorry. No, I thought she was continuing talking, but she's scratching her head. So
Yeah.
yeah, no, I was saying earlier that I'm not surprised that the biggest opposition to it so far has been from lawyers and barristers and those in the legal profession, because it undermines the system that they have to work with every day. You know, there might be a small group of them who change if they're specialize in that kind of law and they particularly unethical. I would say that most lawyers are probably want to do their job properly and they want to have a fair law system. And imagine being a barrister or a lawyer who has to represent the accused in these circumstances. The thought of it really makes me shudder. It's, you know, and actually makes me think of Mark Pearson. No, last year, Mark Pearson was accused of sexual assault. He was going home from work and he brushed past a lady at Waterloo train station, and she went to the police and said to the police that she was sexually assaulted by a man during the rush hour at Waterloo train station. This is a bit graphic, but this is what she said happened. She said that the man put his finger up vagina, skirt, or as well, she had leggings on, but she had on a dress, I think, over it or something, and off. And then when she went to the police, she said that he was tall and he had hair. And Mark isn't very tall and he's bald. Yeah, Mark is bald, a bit like Steve. And so yeah, it's not funny, but he was they were looking for the man that supposedly did this to her. They tracked him down by his Oyster card, turned up at his house, barged into his door at like 5 in the morning and hauled him off to the police station. And then he got taken to court, and they obviously thought they had enough evidence to take him to court. They used the CCTV as evidence, and it quite clearly shows on CCTV that he brushed past her, and there was like a couple of seconds at the most. And that is the amount of time that would have been needed to do this particular crime. Cross-examined in court, and her story did not make sense, and so he was dismissed. Imagine that this new law or this new procedure that's been agreed was in place then. Because it also turns out that the CCTV that was used as evidence against him was slowed down. Like when he brushed past her, it took longer than it actually did, and the people that were in the jury information in advance. So the CPS, we think, games here to try and convict an innocent man, but they probably would say that they just made a mistake by not telling him. But that's a side point here. Imagine that he might be in jail for a crime he didn't commit because the woman probably would have chosen not to be cross-examined. I am assuming if she had the option.
I've just looked at three kind of mainstream media kind of articles there just about that. They're all a bit vague, saying things will be changed, a plan to be changed.
Yeah.
But
are you guys hearing Paula? Okay.
She's a little bit croaky.
Garbled. Yeah. Be garbled. Try that again.
Yeah, I've just kind of Googled that and looked at three different kind of sources. Can you hear me now?
I think it might be a good idea for you to log out and log back in. I think sometimes the connection gets all bungled up.
Okay.
Because the audio is really pretty bad there. We'll be on this topic for a little bit, I think. Okay. I think that the case you're describing there, Natoya, is like a textbook case of why we should not have this kind of law. I think it's pretty fair to assume that Mark Pearson would be in jail if not for this kind of law right now. Or under today's law, he would be in jail.
Yeah, I think there's a high possibility that he would be, because it was this lady's story that fell apart under cross-examination, because it was quite clear that Mark didn't match the description of the man that she said did it. It was quite clear that he brushed past her within a less than a few seconds. He didn't have enough time to do it. And there was other evidence as well that was he did not do this crime. And it all came out when she was cross-examined.
Am I right to remember that she couldn't identify him in the courtroom?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That important point as well. Yeah. There were so many things, so many holes in the case.
Yeah.
I think Mark Pearson's story is really strong. Are people out there who are thinking of taking up a legal to this? Get in touch with him.
Well, we've got Paula back. Paula, you had something you said you found there on the relevant to this case.
Yeah, they seem to, is the connection okay?
Much better, yeah.
Good.
Okay, cool. It's I was trying to kind of get some definitive kind of, they're all talking about plans to do that rather than saying that, but the hook they seem to be basing it on was that defendants were more likely to plead guilty before going to court once they'd seen that evidence. Now, regardless of that, it is kind of not a good idea just to give one version of it's basically kind of like going down the feminist narrative route, isn't it? Really, that there's only one version of the truth that matters, really, and it can't be contested, which is just ludicrous. And if you care about justice at all, then it's
we also
crazy.
have to we already have the listen and believe policy in place. So then that's another reason why this woman was able, why Mark was able to be brought to court, and why they could bring this case to court, because the victim, he was labelled a victim, and the police assume now that it definitely did happen and that there wasn't a possibility that it did not happen. So all accusations of this kind, the claimant is called a victim and they assume that the crime has 100% happened. And also we have to remember that they can get compensation from the government.
Natoya, is this
whether or
listen
not
and believe, is that like a term of something, some legislation there, or is this something a term you use to describe the fact that we're supposed to believe everything that a quote victim says?
Wasn't that Sarkeesian?
Yeah, go on.
Sarkeesian coined that term.
Wasn't that something that Sarkeesian? I'm not sure if she started it, but she on her kind of TEDx lectures, she would begin with a big screen that said "listen and believe." It was very Orwellian.
Oh, that is weird. Yeah, I mean,
and,
that's even bold for a church sermon.
And I think Elizabeth, you kind of highlighted something that happened on social media about what's this archaic law that this feminist MP has managed to revoke. Basically, but she hasn't done anything. Basically, she's and basically that hashtag that they were using. Basically, there's a really archaic law in British law. It's kind of akin to kind of freemen of the city being able to kind of herd their sheep through the centre of town. No, I've worked in the NHS for 10 years and sent women to women's clinics for abortions, for kind of, well, you don't send them for abortions, you send them for consultations, basically, to the women's clinics. there's never been any kind of prosecution in the UK to do with late term abortion or even any term abortion. In I can't. You'll remember her name, won't you, Elizabeth? Because he was claiming.
Oh,
that
you know what? It's completely slipped my mind. It's completely
claiming that
slipped my mind. But yeah, an MP has just, a female MP's just got through this bill to decriminalise abortion, and
decriminalise.
feminists were kind of
Have the best
in the streets,
in the
like
world.
this big victory. And you know, the law should have been changed, because, you know, as it stood, it was that abortion was legal, but only in specific cases. And so you had to say that, you know, it would cause you mental anguish if you were to have this baby and this kind of thing. And
Yeah,
now you won't. Now you can just say,
those
oh, I just choose not to have it.
Yeah, those forms are called HSA 1 forms. And basically, I know that it's technically they need to have 2 signatures to do that. Basically, technically, what happens in the NHS is that the woman will go to her GP. The GP will sign the HSA 1, fax it through to the woman's clinic, and then someone at the woman's clinic will sign it. That's the second signature. There's no negotiation. There's no kind of bureaucratic kind of hold up on it or anything. A doctor, a GP who might have kind of religious kind of qualms about doing that will just send them to another GP in the practice. Really, there are in the UK we have the best, most progressive access to those kinds of and yet women feminists are still not happy. I really don't know what on earth more they want.
What do they say they want that they're not happy about, that they had to march in the streets over abortion? It's like, what is their claim?
Well, the claim is apparently, even though there's been no prosecution, it's a point to the victim. There are no victims. There have been no prosecutions whatsoever. It's a completely kind of it's meaningless. It's they've kind of found some kind of archaic kind of thing that they can put their hands up and go, oh, look at me, aren't I great? And basically, it's nothing. They haven't helped women at all. Basically, the patriarchy have already been helping women with the best access to abortion in the UK than any feminist could ever have done. So for them to kind of claim a victory is really kind of hollow.
Can't say I heard about this victory. Was it recent?
I'm just trying to find it on Twitter now.
Okay.
Yeah. So, God, it feels like the last week and a half or something.
Oh, it's quite recent then.
A lot has happened since then.
Huh. So, how about Philip Davies? How's that fella doing these days?
Oh, we love Philip Davies. So I think Elizabeth has had some exciting conversations with those who oppose Philip Davies this week, haven't you, Elizabeth?
Just for everybody watching who may not be familiar with Philip Davies, he's a fellow who is defending or trying to change the wording or the name of a government body to be for equality instead of just women's equality. Is that right?
Yeah, he initially called the foundation of the Women and Equalities Committee depressing, and then in October, I think it was, he was actually appointed to it. Nation from feminists, which was beautiful. And the first thing he said was that he wants to change the name to simply the Equalities Committee. And so we have formed a little pressure group called Ladies For Philip Davies, and we're trying to support him in this end, and also with other things he does, because he highlights men's issues in Parliament, and when kind of sexist legislation is proposed, he says, you know, this isn't acceptable, and explains why. And introduced us in an article. It must have been in the last week, was it? It wasn't. We didn't talk
Last
about it in our
week,
last.
not this week.
Was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, he introduced us in an article in Heat Street, and he also happened to kind of slyly set us up for a bit of a showdown with Shipley Feminist Zealots, who are a group who were founded after he gave a speech saying that feminist zealots want equality when it suits. And we've since then we were tweeting them and they were just ignoring us. And then I went to their Facebook page and started commenting on one of their links. And they'd said that Philip Davies says horrible things about women and women's rights. So I said, can you enlighten me as to what horrible things Philip Davies has said about women and women's rights? And I also said, you know, does it mean anything to you that Philip Davies was the only MP to attend a meeting Baroness Cox set up with women who've been affected by Sharia courts? And so the first response was from a woman who, to get back to my first question at some point later, but I might be interested to know that she'd led a protest against Sharia courts. And I thought, this is going really well. You know, I think that you should be pro Philip Davies and more skeptical of all these feminist MPs who didn't show up to that meeting. And then another one of their number got back and said, oh, well, Philip Davies has unfortunately tried to filibuster all of these legislation that would have helped women in these situations. And she mentioned the Istanbul Convention and the honour killings bill. So I pointed out that the only, you know, Philip Davies said that he agreed with the gist of the honour killings bill, but he had a problem with the fact that it didn't recognise the 24% of male victims of these crimes. And as far as the Istanbul Convention goes, you know, it writes feminist theory into law. Like the preamble is full of it, all about how domestic violence is caused by historic power relations between men and women, and it's designed to keep women in their subservient place. And then I got 12 hours of silence, followed by them making the group private. So it was to begin with, but I mean, it was a shame because, you know, the first woman who got back, I think I could have had an actual conversation with her, but they freaked out. And, you know, it just...
Do you have a link for this?
I've got screenshots because they did private.
Right.
I tweet out some screenshots, which are, I mean, they've been retweeted by our @Ladies For PD account on Twitter, haven't they?
Okay, Paula, the We Trust Women hashtag.
Yeah, that's why, you know, you were saying the listen and believe. This is the hashtag that they were using for the archaic. I've just been looking at the BPAS, which is the kind of access to, you know, I'm pro-choice, but the hypocrisy in this is just ridiculous. Tomorrow MPs have a chance to change our archaic abortion law. Email your MP, hashtag We Trust Women, and then it's got this 19, I don't know, looks like 1970s kind of feminist picture with somebody holding up a banner saying revolting. Funny. Anyway, but then the banner is, any woman in the UK who ends a pregnancy without legal authorization faces life imprisonment.
What? Where did that come from?
Well, that's a
technically.
If you go home and you drink bleach to try and, you know, end your pregnancy, you will go to prison. If you access, you know, safe legal women's clinics, there have been no prosecutions ever. So I've really got no idea what these women...
Can I make a suggestion to everyone? If you're going to type on your computer, if you could just put your mute button on, because it's kind of wreaking a little havoc in the automated switching thing here. Okay. So if you're gonna type or tap away at stuff in the room, just put your mute button on until you're ready to talk. Okay. So sorry to interrupt you there, Paula.
No, it's just bizarre, really bizarre, kind of how they've tried to kind of latch onto something, which I guess in kind of isolation, away from real life, might kind of stand for something.
It seems to be connected to this desire to always be promoting women and feminists as perennial, permanent victims of something. So digging up this old law, I mean, my guess is that there's an awful lot of old, obsolete laws that would never be used. And it's nothing wrong with getting rid of them. I'm all for that. Get rid of them all. But to hail it as some kind of human rights victory is a bit bizarre.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm sure I can wash my underwear in down at the big market at some point. If that might be an archaic law, but nobody needs to get rid of it because it's going to happen.
Elizabeth, you're the expert on male circumcision here. Now, am I right in saying that infant male circumcision, or at least in fact male circumcision, in the UK and kind of still is, but because of the religious freedom aspect, it overturns it, or have I got that wrong?
No, I mean, it's simply against the law. Genital mutilation of boys or girls is under the Offences Against the Person Act 1861.
Yeah, so the reason I was asking is because Paula, you're just talking about, well, we have a law that is old, but not archaic, in the sense that, well, I feel that it should be implemented.
Interestingly, it was something that the conservative woman Laura Perrins mentioned in an article about this new like rape trials thing. She actually mentioned that FGM, because that got a special law against it a couple of years ago. And she mentioned that it was already against the law under the Offences Against the Persons Act. And I thought, oh my God, like, you've almost said that male circumcision is against the law. You've almost said it, but not quite.
Yeah.
It was Diana Johnson, MP. That was the woman who's claimed this revolutionary step forward for women in abortion.
Yeah, big victory, right? Now, earlier we were talking about this letter to universities being forced to defend freedom of speech. What's that all about? Does anybody know anything about that?
So our Minister for Higher Education, Jo Johnson, has sent a seemingly rather stern letter to universities, which someone at the Times has seen, but it's not published anywhere. I was looking earlier, where he said, is that from the actual thing? Let me see. He said that it's the legal duty of universities to ensure, as far as practicable, that freedom of speech is secured for members, students, employees, and visiting speakers. This means that all university premises should not be denied to any individual or body on connected with their beliefs or views, policy, or objectives. So this is absolutely massive news, because at the moment 94% of universities censor their students, and we've had an absolute rash of no platforming going on. It's been insane. Changes are going to be introduced under the Higher Education and Research Bill, which I've got a photograph of here. It's in the very first of it. It says, oh no, that's not right. Okay, oh, what a small image this is. It says UK university, so this is under UK universities functions. It says UK universities are autonomous institutions and must uphold the principles of academic freedom and freedom of speech. and that UK universities must ensure they promote freedom of thought and freedom of expression and freedom from discrimination, which is a bit of an obscure, strange add-on to that one, I think. But yeah, it's absolutely fantastic news.
So what is the force and effect of this letter? Does it have any like teeth behind it?
It's going to be written into a bill, so that will be passed and become law.
Okay.
Very
good.
soon, actually. Mm-hmm.
I'm a bit skeptical about this because is this bill going to remove? Because it's mainly the student union that implements these anti-free speech policies. People like Spiked magazine are quite good for finding out more about the rules and who implements them at universities in terms of this. They've got a very good thing called free speech rankings. But I thought that it was the student union that had the kind of influence that was doing the most damage, and not necessarily the university administration themselves.
But just a second there, what Elizabeth was just reading implied that this responsibility of the university to ensure that all their students have the right to freedom of speech, which would imply that administrators got to shut down those student unions who are opposed to freedom of speech. Is that not what I'm hearing properly?
What I've read has said that it's going to affect student unions too. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that you're actually at university, in the university world, so perhaps you can enlighten me a bit. But I got the impression that the funding for student unions doesn't only come from the universities, and therefore there might be a way they can still try and influence. Is that, am I just sort of clutching at nothing here?
Is that me you're talking to?
No, that was to Paula.
To Paula, right?
I don't have anything to do with the student union. I haven't even, I mean, the first time I was at university, I joined the student union so I could get 10% off Topshop. That was the only reason. And I didn't care much about any of the politics. I walk past the student union building, and there's always some nice pink-haired and blue-haired people of color. People of multicolored rainbows, you know, in pajamas, handing out leaflets and stuff. I'm not really, I don't know about the funding or anything like that. I try
Well,
to
in
stay away.
Canada, I don't know if it would be different there, but in Canada, I think it is student dues. So students arrive on campus and they're presented with this additional bill in addition to their tuition, which is a bunch of tacked on fees, which I think typically includes student union fees. And I don't think they're optional in Canada anyways. They may be in the UK, I wouldn't know.
Something funny.
Yeah, in the UK, if you're going to be a member, you pay, but you don't have to.
Yeah, you don't have to. But because they give you lots of rewards, like high street kind of discounts and stuff like that. Most people just get your student union card for that, really, so you can get, you know, another 10 pence off your McDonald's. That's about it. But something funny did happen when because I'm kind of registered as having Asperger's, and so I got this kind of student emails are just a constant, just barrage of junk, but I got a text. I don't know how they got my phone number, but they said, you have been registered on our safe space, on our register. We can track you on your phone. If you need to be in a safe space, please text us back.
I get it.
And I just thought, oh my God, that's the fucking last thing I need. Can imagine me in a safe space with those fucking idiots. That'd be funny.
Based conversation, that's a big one all on its own.
Apologies for swearing.
Oh, no, swearing quite okay here. So you've mentioned there's bad news to this letter, Elizabeth. What is the bad news to this letter?
Oh no, the bad news was Liz Truss's rape trial reforms.
Oh, that one. Yeah, that's pretty bad news.
Yeah, no, this one's all good news.
Great. Is there anything else that's developed in the last week that you girls want to talk about?
Not really, because as I said, behind the scenes with Ladies For Philip Davies, we're working on. We'll be working on that, and I'll be working on some nice visual memes and images we can use that people can share and that we can use as part of our tongue-in-cheek / serious pressure group.
We have a carry on theme.
Yeah.
Carry on in Westminster.
Yeah, carry on in Westminster. That's great. I thank you. Your suggestion is awesome. Seriously.
Yeah.
How about you, Paula? You're on university, and is there anything you want to leave us with? It's coming up on.
Not really.
A lot of time left.
I've been doing exams. I've just finished my last exam, so no, I haven't been concentrating on anything but passing my exams.
Okay, good for you. Well, my condolences to all of the men in the UK who have to deal with this new ridiculous law in which you're forbidden from defending yourselves against potentially false accusations. That, to me, is probably the worst news I've heard in quite some time in any Western jurisdiction. We'll see where that plays out, but I expect we may see more miscarriages of justice as a result of this.
Well, before we go, what Mark Pearson said about when he made a complaint about his case.
Yeah, sure.
Was. Okay, so Mark Pearson recently said, "I've recently been sent the British Transport Police internal investigation into my IPCC complaint." So the IPCC is the kind of body that is like the regulator for the police. Okay. Detective Superintendent Gareth Williams, head of BTP Professional Standards, has decided not to uphold any of my complaints. I will have to appeal to the IPCC. Or I discovered that the title of the officer in charge of my case, DC Solomon Yazdani, does not, I thought, stand for Transport Detective Constable, but Trainee Detective Constable. I'm being sarcastic. He is a trainee. Detective Sergeant Danny Stockdale had originally reviewed my case file and have authorised it before I was charged. He wrote, "Although there are some evidential difficulties in this case, like no formal ID, no medical or forensic evidence, and very unusual motive, reason why the victim's account should not be taken at face value." So he's basically saying that even though there was no real evidence, not a very good motivation, no forensic evidence, no medical evidence, there is no reason why the victim's account should not be taken at face value. So there is no reason why they should question whether or not the accuser or making this up, or perhaps accuse the wrong person of this crime. So this is the kind of that people such as Mark Pearson, who had a very clear-cut dismissal, is getting from the authorities and the CPS. And really, it just shows that our authorities in this country, and our politicians, they're not held. And when you try to hold them accountable, this is the kind of response you get. So I think sad at this, really. It frankly really pisses me off. I
think I've long held a kind of suspicion that we all know kind of feminism is kind of built on patriarchy theory, and their whole kind of raison d'etre to that is to dismantle the patriarchy. they can't do that by force. So I've kind of long held a kind of like a hypothesis that they're just going to try and bankrupt the patriarchy by bringing kind of ridiculous by making kind of sexism a hate crime that's punishable by law, by, you know, and it's basically going to just drain all the resources out of civilization until, you know, it collapses. Basically, you know, what happened with the Soviet Union.
Well, it's certainly doing a lot of damage to male-female relationships, I think. And most, you know, the most prominent of which is the family.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's its isn't it? That it wants to kind of just erase the family completely.
Yeah,
Well,
feminism has never tried to hide that fact, right?
Well, it
No.
does now, but it didn't when it started in the second wave in the 70s. They were very open about that, but it definitely tries to hide it now.
Universal, what you were saying, Natty, about what's going to be the next kind of front coming up on that, about universal kind of wage,
Basic
about women, feminists wanting to be paid for looking after their own children.
Yeah.
Even though rather than they want the government to pay for that, they want to kind of invite basically it's that kind of extension of the, you know, the socialist dream of the personal is political. Basically, it's kind of, there is no such thing as personal. The government kind of, you invite them into your life, you invite them into you, and so basically then they own you, and they own your ovaries, they own, you know, everything about you, which seems to be completely feminists don't seem to kind of understand that if they asking the government to pay for all of these things, to pay them to exist, then that gives the government, whatever kind of big government that is, power to tell them what to do, and just to kind of erase their agency and their individuality. And that's the problem with socialism in a nutshell. So
yeah, I'm guessing they're thinking that if the government was full of 100% women, that all the laws that would be passed and universal basic income idea or being paid for care work idea would be fine, because it would be women running everything, and there would be no one would abuse their power, and none of these women would make any kind of laws to benefit themselves over others. Like they've forgotten that you know, greed and corruption is a human trait and not a gendered one.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I study female intersexual competition, and I know that utopia wouldn't be any better than, you know, a male any kind of utopia.
There's no utopia anywhere. That's all fantasy land from childhood, and then that's
the never get there. Yeah,
quintessential thing you touched on here is that negative traits, or I guess traits as you were describing, Natoya, are non-gendered, but that is exactly what feminism is trying to do, is to create the male as the holder of negative traits and the female as the holder of all human positive traits, right?
Yeah.
That's the genderization.
Can you imagine if we had an all-female government and all-female CEOs and bosses, and, you know, we did have some kind of radical feminist implementation in this country, and there was only a small amount of men left? What would they do then? Who would they blame all of their problems on? Because there would still be many, many problems, as we know. There would still be people bullying each other and abusing each other, because women are bitches to each other quite often. I know, secondary school full of girls, and it really, I don't know if they've ever sat down really and thought about that. The radical feminists, anyway, in any kind of serious way. And we know that they don't really know how to think very well. But I don't know if the whole thing is completely incomprehensible.
Well, I find radical feminism has a little bit more kind of logical integrity than intersectional feminism, which, radical feminists are wrong, but at least they kind of stick to their own kind of internal logic, whereas intersectional feminists are just kind of, everything is problematic, which is to say nothing is, which is to say nothing, basically.
Yeah.
So,
That sounds about right.
right, you're gonna help. Like, thanks for that. Oh.
Well, ladies, probably it's time to call it to a close. Any final remarks from anyone?
I was just going to say that, Natty, the answer would be internalized misogyny wrought by post-traumatic patriarchy syndrome.
Oh,
You heard
I
it?
didn't think of that.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah.
Okay. You got to write on that one, Elizabeth.
That would make a good novel.
Post-patriarchy stress theory. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, actually, there is a feminist novel called Herland, which kind of Charlotte Pilkins. I can't remember her name now. I read it ages ago when I used to be a feminist. Which kind of lays out the kind of feminist utopia, which is basically just like a kind of ant colony where you have everybody's walking around in mouse suits and short hair, and there are queens who give birth, and the rest of them are just workers, and they work towards the benefit of the queens. And yeah, that's kind of what happens with meerkats now.
Wow.
Is it?
And there are allegories in nature for toxic femininity, and it's not nice.
No.
I can imagine. I mean, you're making me think of Mean Girls. Remember the film Mean Girls? You know, you had the queen bee, got all her minions running around doing that for her. It sounds just like that.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Men have nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
Well, ladies, thank you very much once again for coming on, and hopefully we can pick this up again next week and get an update. Maybe some analysis of this new bill will be out. Maybe one of you will choose to write on it. Be happy to hear what you have to say. So
yeah, well, I think there's been quite a few articles in the Daily Mail and Spikes magazine and Conservative Women all giving their viewpoints of backlash against it. So check those out.
We should have a look at at those arguments, because maybe this story isn't over yet.
Mm.
So thank you very much again, ladies and viewers. Thanks for watching. Tune in again same time next week to have an update and a conversation with the Liberty Bells from London, UK. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.